While our tutorials do a good job explaining each step, we also recognize that building a pergola in a real outdoor environment is different than building in a warehouse and utilizing smaller pieces to demonstrate from. So this video is going to show you the different steps played out in a real-life pergola build. The different steps are time-coded below, so if you're looking for a specific step, you should be able to navigate to that point. If you have additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to provide additional support. So the crew is building a 17 by 22 foot attached pergola today over a paver patio. With the patio being done with pavers, the crew has already come in and created concrete footings for the posts by removing the pavers that will be in the way and pouring these footers. The instructions for recommended footing size based on post size can be found on the written instruction guide, so you do want to pay attention to that. But for this particular pergola, the posts are 7-inch square columns, which means our footings were poured at a 10.5-inch square. This allows them to center the aluminum posts and still have room for the bottom post skirt that will perfectly fit over the top. Your footing depth should always be based on the recommended footing depth and frost line for your location, with a minimum of 36 inches deep. For our post installation, our crews already measured the desired height of the post and are just using a speed square to mark out the cut line all the way around the post. A little lubricant is used when cutting the aluminum. A similar process is then done for the vinyl post sleeves. The crew centers the aluminum posts on the poured footing. The hammer drill is used, followed by concrete fasteners to secure the post. You can use large diameter tapcons, expansion anchors, epoxy anchor, etc. If you have a post that's just not perfectly level, you can use composite shims here to level it out. You just back out your anchor a little bit and get your shim adjusted to bring it plumb and then tighten down. Getting your decorative post skirts on can be a challenge. They're meant to fit snug. That means getting them on can take a minute. Here you can see one of the guys here shaving the edge of the vinyl post, which can make it a little easier to slide the skirt on. You can prepare your ledger board by installing your rafter hangers at the same time you are cutting the ledger board to the appropriate length and before securing to your structure. The rafter hangers have been measured out appropriately, and the crew is getting the structural screws started through the rafter hangers just enough to stay in place. Starting the screws while down on the ground makes it much easier to secure when it's time to get up on the ladder. With a sided home, the ledger board can be installed directly over top of your siding, sealing around the edges of your ledger board, or you can remove the siding to flash in your ledger trim board. After cutting into the siding here, the crew's placing butyl tape to prevent any kind of water damage or leaks. Ensure your tape extends up under the siding above where your ledger is fastened and extends down over top of the siding at the bottom of your ledger board. Include an overlap over top of the siding at the bottom of your ledger board location by about 1/4 inch. This pergola needed a spliced ledger board due to the length. Spliced pieces can be necessary for your ledger board, Purlin holders, or Purlins depending on the size of your pergola. It's simply taking 2 shorter pieces to create the appropriate length needed for your project. The spliced ledger board will be lined up and installed just like the rest, and by the time the rest of your pergola is installed, you won't notice the separate pieces used. We'll do a similar process with the Purlins a little later. The crew's installing the ledger board here, and the key is to make sure that you're fastening to something structural: studs, headers, wall plates, etc. The crew fastens down the screws on each end of the ledger board and then proceeds to fasten down the rest. With the post, vinyl sleeve, and the ledger board fully installed, it's now time for your beams. The beams have been pre-measured and have both the hurricane clips and beam attachment brackets installed while the beam was on the ground. Now, the beam attachment bracket and hurricane clips are optional and may not be in every pergola kit, but this beam is fastened to the post with the beam attachment bracket. And then next we have our rafters. While the guys are fastening down the rafters to the beam, another crew member is on the other side securing the rafters to the ledger board. The rafters should slide right into your rafter hangers. Just make sure that the aluminum is pulled flush with the end of the vinyl so that you're securing your screws into the aluminum and not just the vinyl sleeve. Your purlins will end up getting fastened to the purlin holder so they don't move once lined up correctly. However, you don't have to screw them in at every purlin holder, just via one purlin holder. Again, a shortcut is to start these pan screws while on the ground. And again, it's a little different as they are working with a spliced purlin on this one. So where you would typically only have one screw for the purlins, these guys are using two, where they will secure the two separate pieces. The simplest way to line up all your purlin holders is to carefully measure and install your first and last purlin holder. The guys will then tie a string line from the first purlin holder to the last purlin holder so that you don't need to measure every additional one. Just line up your purlin holders with the string line and fasten down. These purlins have already been cut to the proper length, so the purlins are then slid through the purlin holders. This is always my favorite part because it becomes apparent just how much shade these structures provide. To make sure that they're lined up evenly throughout, you would usually use a tape measure from the end of the rafter to the end of the purlin, making sure that they follow the same overhang, and then securing with the pan screw down through the purlin holder and into the purlin. With the spliced purlins on this one, the process just moves into where you're joining the spliced purlins. You can see here he's measuring for the center of the purlin holder so that the two ends of the purlins are butted up to each other while in the middle of that purlin holder. That ensures you don't see the seam where those two come together, and it will keep all the ends perfectly in line. And with that, these guys are all done and this pergola is ready to go. The pergola on this one has 90% shade, and you can see here just how much that really brings to the patio. It will make a big difference in the summers, allowing them to still enjoy their outdoor space without sitting in the direct sun. So what else do you want to see? Leave a comment below if this was helpful or not, and ideas for other helpful videos. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss additional updates.